Mouthwashing is a psychological horror game made by Wrong Organ in 2024. This game follows a crew of 5 people: the nurse Anya, mechanic Swansea, intern Daisuke, and our protagonist, the pilot Curly and co-pilot Jimmy. We follow these characters as one of our crew derails our ship on purpose and figure out how to survive, but it's a whole lot deeper than that. Today, I'll be discussing the game and why it's so important. Before we start, this is a brand new channel and really appreciate it if you'd like the video if you enjoy it, or if you enjoy me, subscribe. I want to hit 100 subs before the end of the year. Usually in games, we play as the good guy, looking to fight the bad guy. But in Mouthwashing, we play as the villain, Jimmy, our co-pilot. He's a narcissist and a control freak. He loves the power of being co-pilot, as his response to the role is he likes being in control. It's especially shown after the crash when Curly is messed up and he is put into the captain role, asserting his authority and never admitting his faults, which leads to him being the primary cause of death of every other crew member. Jimmy is shown to be manipulated, which is very clearly shown when he was manipulating our youngest crew member Daisuke into going into danger, saying things like be confident, be brave, and that he has to do this, even after Daisuke expresses to him that he's scared and doesn't want to, which leads to his death. So why does this matter? At the end of the day, it's just another POV, right? Well, no. Since our narrator is so clearly horrible and narcissistic, everything is portrayed like he's in the right. We all of a sudden can't trust ourselves anymore. For example, Anya is clearly scared of Jimmy and very skittish around him, for reasons we'll discuss later. But it's portrayed to us like she's unprofessional, unqualified, and overly emotional. This type of narration is few and far between, and it's important because it makes you question yourself and your own morals. Of course you know he's doing is wrong, but it's portrayed in a way that it's justified in our head. Because he can't be wrong, where he's us. You start to feel this conflict in yourself, fighting between having to do these actions and the morality of it. Now this part of the video gets heavy, so if you're sensitive to any of the topics that were discussed in the top, or what'll be on the screen right now, they are mostly in this portion. So if any of these will affect you, please skip to the timestamp on the screen. Your mental health is much more important than my watch time. I'm also going to leave some useful hotlines for mental health in the description. Please, if you need someone to talk to, check those out. Anya is one of the community's favorites for a very good reason. She's very kind and can be perceived as emotional, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. Remember how earlier I mentioned she was very scared and horrified around Jimmy? That's because Jimmy
assaulted
her and impregnated her before the crash of the ship, which is a decided reason why Jimmy derailed and crashed it in the first place. He knew if they landed, people would find out about what he did, and he couldn't have that. Anya struggles with this, day in and day out, constantly reassuring herself for months with the ideation of no one's worst moments make them monsters. But she doesn't believe that. It's what she has to believe to get by. We see her change from a friendly, kind, and even playful person when she's with Curly. And now she's not just a stupid nurse that Jimmy tries to convince us. She's just a scared person who's trying to cope with what's happened to her. She had no one there for her. Even Curly questionably ignored what happened and decided trying to help Jimmy was a better idea. The only one who really helped was Swansea, which is kind of ignored by the fandom. He's seen being passive aggressive and angry towards Jimmy pretty much all the time as we play as him, and it's even implied that he was going to give Anya the last cryogenic pod that was left after the crash if she needed it, but it never got to that point. The pressure of caring for Curly while he was immobilized, the abuse from Jimmy and having to see him every single day, and the progression of her pregnancy, she cracked, overdosing on painkillers, leaving Jimmy to later abort her baby from her body. It's such a sad story because it's real. It's devastating knowing our main character did this to her. You can tell why she's so liked as a character because she has a real story. Things like this happen, being stuck with your abuser. It might not always be a spaceship, but it's a school, a workplace. And I want everyone to know out there, if you've ever been in a situation that's felt similar to hers. You're not alone. No, I don't know your story, but I do know I've been through something very similar before. And it'll all be okay. One day, you'll make it out, and you won't have to look back ever again. Curly is our second main character. He is who we play as if we were before the crash of the ship. He's our main pilot and is naturally under a lot of stress. Having so much to do ultimately makes a lot of the individual issues pass under his radar, like Jimmy's increasingly toxic actions or Anya's plead for help. This puts him in a gray area, because he's definitely not a good person, but it doesn't feel intentional the same way Jimmy's actions do. He continually decides to ignore problems that are harder to face, even if they're the most important ones. He decides ignoring them and trying to shun them away and look at the bigger picture is the overall better idea than having to deal with something hard. Curly rushed into the cockpit the moment before the crash, which resulted in the vaporization of his limbs, skin, eyelids, lips. He was bleeding, brutally wounded, and in so much pain, forcing him to be immobile and left in the medbay for Anya to take care of him. This not only sets the game into motion, but also pushes Jimmy into the position of authority, making him watch paralyzed while the events of the story go down. But that wasn't the end for Curly. His newfound mobility made him a prime target for Jimmy, coming in to complain and even torture by shoving painkillers down his throat. After the rest of the crew is already dead, Curly still cannot rest. He is cut up and forced to eat his own leg as he cannot fight back. I can't imagine the pain he went through, the physical pain, but also all the guilt of witnessing the fruition of what he could have prevented. And even after all of that, the torture wasn't over. As one final act of selfishness, Jimmy uses the cryogenic pod to put Curly in there before killing himself. Jimmy sees it as an act of heroism, saving Curly, but all it's doing is pushing the blame back onto him. Now he's mute, alone, and if some miracle he lives, he'll be permanently damaged. I've talked a lot about the events of the ship, but not a lot about the ship's creator, or the company they're behind. Pony Express created the Tulpar, the ship I've been talking about, and I believe they are sort of the backbone to all that happened in the game. Let's discuss some of the mandates given by Pony Express, specifically how they give a maximum of 5 hours of sleep per night for the crew. Imagine going through everything that happens in mouthwashing on 5 hours of sleep. That explains all the hallucinations that we saw. There's also the lack of preparation for the trip, like throwing Daisuke in last second and not giving Curly any time to prepare for him. All of these issues inevitably led to the closing of Pony Express, which they also barely gave any compensation to the crew. Daisuke is Swansea's intern, which gives us a few moments between them that are important. Swansea is an old man who is pretty ruggish and not very joyous, which contrasts with Daisuke, who is happy and childish. Swansea takes a liking to Daisuke, even if he has his own way of showing it, which concludes with Daisuke dying at Swansea's hand. Daisuke, as previously mentioned, was manipulated by Jimmy, and was coerced into traveling into a vent shaft to open the medical door, which has been wrecked for quite some time. There were exposed wires, big drops, and tight sharp spaces. Daisuke emerged, however, he was brutally wounded. He persevered, however, to make everyone proud, even though all he could do was open the door before collapsing. Swansea is forced to kill him and put him out of his misery. Swansea had kids and a life he was trying to turn around from being an alcoholic. It's pretty clear he saw a son of some sorts in Daisuke, someone he wanted to protect. Daisuke was thought to be lazy by his parents, finding him this internship and going on it, wanting to make them proud. Even so, they both met their fate. I've sort of hopped around this, but the game is called Mouthwashing, but I've yet to mention any mouthwash. So why is mouthwashing named mouthwashing. Around the start of the game, the crew decide to open the storage center of the ship. They discovered that all this was because they were shipping mouthwash, which by itself is wild, but the mouthwash, noted by Anya, has a high sugar content, therefore it sort of cancels out all the hygienic effects it would have had. But it doesn't end there. Mouthwash in this game is a stand-in for addiction and using it as a clutch. For example, Swansea is constantly seen using it to get drunk, since it contains ethanol, as well as Daisuke using it in a scene, followed by him wallowing on the floor. Even Anya considers using it, but notes that it won't fix anything, even if she'd like it to. As time progresses, mouthwash bottles continuously fill the toolbar, showing how it's being used as a clutch to cope with all this happening. It's also noteworthy that it's shown in hallucinations very frequently. So why does it matter? It matters because it's so real. These issues all persist in real life. Abuse, being trapped, relying on alcohol to get through your everyday when it's unbearable. Things like this happen all the time, and mouthwashing portrays it in a new and beautifully morbid way. Feeling powerless for the protagonist and in turn, your actions. It's morbid and emotional and a beautiful story. Thank you, Wrong Organ, for making such a wonderful game, and thank you for watching. This video took a while. I actually lost the original recording of this audio because I recorded it all and my mic was muted the entire time. If you have any comments, questions, or anything to say about the video, please feel free to comment them. I'll see you guys later. And remember, our worst moments don't make us monsters.